youth, middle age, and Hugh, you're looking great.
Okay.
Good to see you.
Fell into that one. Hey, it's good that you've been here at the Silver Spur Awards.
Hugh O'Brian spent decades helping young people through his foundation. He gave millions to charity. He seemed like a true hero, but when he died at 91, everything fell apart. 4 different people claimed to be his secret children. They wanted his fortune. The legal battles were vicious and lasted for years. The money meant for kids' scholarships got stuck in court. The man who tried to change the world ended up destroying his own legacy. His final years became a nightmare that nobody saw coming. Hugh O'Brian was born on April 19, 1925, in Rochester, New York. His birth name was Hugh Charles Cramp. His father was a strict Marine officer whom Hugh later called one of the toughest men he ever knew. His mother had a mixed background that was half German Jewish and half English and Scottish. In the years after World War I, when anti-Semitism and negative attitudes toward Germans were common, this background was both a source of quiet pride and social complexity. Growing up in a disciplined military household, Hugh was shaped by constant reminders of loyalty, heritage, and the meaning of duty. Because of his father's frequent transfers, Hugh's early life was filled with moves. By 1930, the family was living in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where they stayed for 4 years before moving to Chicago. He went to New Trier High School in Winnetka, Illinois, a school known for its tough academics and strong athletics even in the 1930s. Later, he transferred to Kemper Military School in Boonville, Missouri. Kemper's alumni list included generals and political leaders, and Hugh fit right in. He lettered in 4 sports: football, basketball, wrestling, and track. Few students had ever accomplished that. One 1943 Kemper record described him as determined and tireless, recalling how he could run track and then step onto the wrestling mat the very same afternoon. This remarkable endurance helped build the toughness that would later define his life. At just 17 years old, Hugh made a decision that changed everything. He had enrolled at the University of Cincinnati to study pre-law, but after only 1 semester, he left to enlist in the Marines. It was late 1942 or early 1943, right in the middle of World War II. Within months, he became the youngest drill instructor in Marine Corps history, a record that still stands. Though not yet legally an adult, he was the one training recruits, most of them older than himself, at camps in San Diego. His leadership skills were recognized quickly, and he rose through the ranks faster than nearly anyone else of his time. His age made the appointment so unusual that higher-ups investigated it before finally confirming him in the role. During that summer of 1943, while training Marines, Hugh also found a side job that added a Hollywood twist to his life. On weekends, he traveled to Hollywood Boulevard, where he cleaned store windows for $2 per storefront. It was decent money for the time, equal to about $35 today, and it paid for dates with young women, often actresses working in or near the movie theaters. He later laughed about the idea that years before his name would appear in lights, he was scrubbing the glass of the very buildings where stars were celebrated. 17 years later, in 1960, his own star was placed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, on the very block where he once worked. Around this same time, he also had his first taste of show business. One night at the Hollywood Canteen, a USO club where stars volunteered to serve soldiers, he met the actress and radio host Arlene Francis. She encouraged him to appear on her radio program Blind Date, a lively show that paired servicemen with actresses. On air, Hugh broke from the script and spoke his own lines, earning laughs and surprising Francis. The move landed him a date with rising star Virginia Mayo and got Hollywood insiders talking about his name. That small moment opened doors. Before long, stage work followed, and Hollywood was suddenly in his path. When his service ended in 1947, Hugh returned to civilian life, still planning to pursue law. He had been accepted to Yale Law School, but before starting, he chose to stay in California for a while. He ended up living in a boarding house that was home to several of the Goldwyn girls, the glamorous dancers from Samuel Goldwyn's musicals. He earned his keep by helping around the house, cleaning and doing small chores, while soaking in the atmosphere of Hollywood. The plan to study law began to fade as acting opportunities quietly grew closer. The turning point came in 1947 when he attended a rehearsal of Somerset Maugham's play Home and Beauty. He was there there only to watch his girlfriend perform, but when the lead actor fell ill, Hugh was asked to fill in. With no preparation, he stepped on stage and read the lines. The show went on, the reviews praised him, and suddenly agents were calling. The experience changed his life overnight, and the idea of becoming a lawyer was replaced by a new dream. Not long after, director and actress Ida Lupino noticed him and invited him to screen test for her film Never Fear. Released in 1949, the movie told the story of a dancer stricken by polio, a subject deeply felt by audiences during the epidemic. Hugh played the role of a physical therapist opposite Sally Forrest, and his performance caught attention. The success led to a contract with Universal Studios, giving him the stability every young actor dreamed of. Even his name took a Hollywood turn. His real name, Hugh Charles Crampa, caused trouble when his first playbill printed it as Hugh Crape, a mistake that drew laughs and made him worry about future embarrassments. He chose to use his mother's family name, O'Brian, but when it was typed incorrectly as O'Brien, he decided to keep it that way. Ironically, the name that made him famous was born from a simple typo. At Universal, he spent 3 years building his resume with minor roles. Most were small, sometimes uncredited, but he used every chance to grow as an actor. Outside the studio, he joined little theater groups and performed with the Santa Barbara Stock Company, working constantly to improve. Night after night, he polished his timing and delivery. Hugh O'Brian's rise in Hollywood came quickly after he won the Golden Globe for Most Promising Newcomer in 1954, awarded for his 1953 performance as Lieutenant Tom Lamar in The Man from the Alamo. What made the win unusual was that he tied with 2 other young actors, Steve Forrest and Richard Egan, showing just how competitive Hollywood was at the time. Overnight, the award put O'Brian in the same conversation as future leading men. It gave him credibility and opened doors to stronger roles, helping him escape the shallow typecasting that often trapped handsome actors in the 1950s. The recognition from the Hollywood Foreign Press Association became the foundation for what turned into an impressive career in both film and television. By 1954, O'Brian had stepped into major productions. He played Mike Devereaux in Broken Lands, a Technicolor and CinemaScope film alongside Spencer Tracy and Robert Wagner. The movie went on to win the Golden Globe for Best Film Promoting International Understanding and earned 2 Academy Award nominations. That same year, he showed a very different side of his talent in There's No Business Like Show Business, playing Charles Gibbs in a dazzling Irving Berlin musical with Ethel Merman and Marilyn Monroe. The contrast between a serious family western and a glittering Hollywood musical proved that O'Brian was more than a handsome face. He had the skill to move between genres, and audiences took notice. Despite the security of a studio contract, O'Brian made a bold decision early in his career. After 3 years with Universal Studios, he walked away. Most actors clung to studio contracts for guaranteed roles and paychecks, but O'Brian wanted more control. He gave up the safety net in exchange for freedom, taking guest roles in both films and television to build a career on his own terms. The gamble worked. Within a year, he landed parts in Broken Lance and There's No Business Like Show Business, paving the way for the role that would define him, Wyatt Earp. He also developed a reputation for doing his own dangerous stunts. In one memorable shootout scene, he let a stuntman fire a pellet gun loaded with a blood capsule directly at his forehead. There was no rehearsal, and one wrong move could have ended badly. The blood burst exactly on cue, shocking the audience and proving O'Brian's commitment to realism. Many thought he was taking unnecessary risks, but to him, it was worth it. This dedication separated him from actors who relied on doubles and showed Hollywood he was serious about his craft. Off-screen, O'Brian studied method acting while staying in peak physical shape. He played tennis, sailed, swam, and rode long distances on his bicycle. At a time when most actors trained only for looks, he kept himself ready for the physical demands of westerns and action roles. He also spent time with industry veterans, learning techniques that deepened his performances. This balance of discipline and study gave him the rare ability to succeed in both drama and action, strengthening his reputation in the industry. In 1955, at just 30 years old, he was chosen for The Life and Legend of Wyatt Earp. The decision surprised many, since big stars like George Montgomery had also been considered, but producers saw in O'Brian a mix of rugged presence and modern heroism. The show launched on September 6th, just 4 days before Gunsmoke. O'Brian appeared in all 229 episodes, something unusual at the time. time and quickly became a household name. His voice, his look, and his portrayal of the legendary Marshal made him unforgettable. To prepare, O'Brian bought Stuart N. Lake's 1931 biography, Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal, a 392-page book that fueled public fascination with the lawman. He even reached out to Lake himself and convinced him to act as a consultant during the first 2 seasons. Lake's presence on set added detail and authenticity, helping O'Brian ground the role in stories that blurred the line between fact and legend. The book later inspired several films and remained one of the most influential sources on Earp, despite debates about its accuracy. The show arrived during a turning point in television. Until then, most westerns were simple morality tales for children. But in one extraordinary week in September 1955, 3 shows changed that: Wyatt Earp, Gunsmoke, and Cheyenne. Together they created what became known as the adult western, focusing on character depth and moral dilemmas instead of simple good versus evil stories. By 1959, there were 26 adult westerns on primetime television, making the genre one of the most powerful forces in American entertainment. The success of Wyatt Earp was enormous. In its 3rd season, from 1957 to 1958, the show ranked number 6 in U.S. ratings, averaging 13.7 million viewers. Other seasons remained close to the top 10, keeping the show among America's most popular programs. Over 6 years, it aired 229 episodes, a record number for westerns at that time. O'Brian's performance made him so recognizable that fans often addressed him as Marshal Earp long after the show ended. Yet his commitment to realism carried a personal cost. To make the gunfight scenes convincing, he insisted on using full .45 caliber loads instead of the safer quarter loads other actors used. Each day of filming meant firing up to 100 rounds, and while the crew could wear ear protection, O'Brian could not. The damage built up slowly, and by the late 1960s, he began to lose his hearing. Eventually, he needed hearing aids just to follow conversations. He later admitted, "I lost a good part of my hearing during the filming, but I'm glad I used full loads. I am now paying for it because I lost a lot of my hearing during those years filming Wyatt Earp." In 1957, Hugh O'Brian became more than just the face of Wyatt Earp. That year, he appeared regularly on America's biggest variety shows, including The Nat King Cole Show, The Jackie Gleason Show, The Ed Sullivan Show, and The Dinah Shore Chevy Show. His appearances on The Nat King Cole Show on October 22nd and October 29th, 1957, were especially significant. Cole was the first black artist to host a national network variety series, and O'Brian's presence connected him to a moment in television that challenged racial boundaries only 2 years after the murder of Emmett Till. Sharing the spotlight with legends like Jackie Gleason and Ed Sullivan in the same year was almost unheard of for a Western TV star. His schedule reflected the height of his popularity, as the life and legend of Wyatt Earp stayed in the top 10 U.S. shows throughout this period. A few years later, O'Brian found himself stepping into an unexpected role. On December 10, 1962, Raymond Burr was sidelined for emergency surgery, leaving Perry Mason without its lead. O'Brian was asked to step in as attorney Bruce Jason for the 1963 episode, The Case of the Two-Faced Turnabout. He wasn't chosen by chance. Years earlier, he had been a good neighbor to Gail Patrick, the show's executive producer, even mowing her lawn. That simple kindness resurfaced at the right time. The episode became one of the rare chapters without Burr, and was remembered for the novelty of seeing the Wyatt Earp star argue a case in court. Critics called the plot far-fetched, but O'Brian's performance added a memorable footnote to both his career and the show's history. By the early 1970s, O'Brian was ready for something different. In 1972, he starred in the NBC series Search, playing Hugh Lockwood, a high-tech agent equipped with miniature cameras in tie clips and rings, along with dental and ear implants that sent back live feeds to a headquarters called Probe Control. The format was ahead of its time, blending James Bond-style action with NASA-inspired technology. O'Brian shared top billing with Tony Franciosa and Doug McClure as the series' rotated leads, but the show never reached the success he hoped for. After just 23 episodes, it ended with a 14.6 Nielsen rating, placing number 63 out of 75 shows in the 1972-73 season. Though short-lived, its futuristic gadgets later earned it a cult following among fans of sci-fi and espionage stories. O'Brian's film career was just as varied. In 1965, he played Hugh Lombard in 10 Little Indians, an adaptation of Agatha Christie's Christie's famous mystery. In 1976, he took on the role of gambler Jack Pulford in The Shootist, John Wayne's final film. It was a historic moment, placing O'Brian opposite the legendary Wayne in his last screen performance, which many saw as the symbolic end of the Western era. Years later, in 1988, he introduced himself to a new generation as the ruthless businessman Granger in the comedy Twins, acting alongside Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito in a box office hit. At the same time, O'Brian was determined to show audiences he was more than a Western hero. On January 11, 1964, he guest hosted the Hollywood Palace, with stars like Ginger Rogers and Johnny Mathis joining the broadcast that drew more than 20 million viewers. In 1965, he appeared on the music variety series Shindig, which introduced American audiences to The Who and the Rolling Stones. By engaging with rock music and teenage culture, O'Brian proved he could adapt to the changing tastes of the 1960s, something many of his peers struggled to do. While his career thrived, his personal life kept him in the headlines. In the 1960s, he was known as one of Hollywood's most eligible bachelors, often linked to glamorous women like Princess Soraya, the former Queen of Iran, Oscar-winning actress Rita Moreno, and model actress Susan Denberg. Their public outings at premieres and parties fueled constant tabloid stories, showing O'Brian as the wealthy, mysterious playboy that many imagined but few really knew. It was a striking contrast to the upright lawman he portrayed on screen. Then came a scandal that shook his carefully built image. In 1969, Los Angeles photographer Adina Etkes, sometimes spelled Etkes, filed a paternity suit claiming that O'Brian was the father of her son, Hugh Donald Crampe, who was then 16. She said the boy was conceived during their relationship in 1951. After years of denial, the court ruled in her favor, declaring O'Brian the legal father. The ruling was unusual for the time, as celebrity paternity cases rarely became public. The court ordered O'Brian to pay $250 per month in child support. For fans who adored him as the moral Wyatt Earp, it was a stunning revelation. The press followed every detail, exposing the gap between his heroic television persona and his personal choices. Letters from fans poured in, some expressing disappointment, others offering support, while producers worried about how the scandal would affect his career. The embarrassment never fully left him. Hollywood insiders noted how deeply the case had wounded him. The man who had built his reputation on playing honorable figures now stood as an example of how quickly a private matter could become a public reckoning. The scandal reflected the changing social climate of the 1960s, when stars were no longer shielded from scrutiny. Even decades later, the controversy followed him. When O'Brian died in 2016, his trust revealed language that stunned many. It stated clearly, "I do not have any children, living or deceased." It went further, specifically naming Hugh Donald Crampe and Adina Etkes, along with others, to exclude them from any claim to his estate. The trust was worth millions, and the blunt wording showed how determined he was to keep them out of his legacy. The statement even dismissed any future evidence that might suggest heirs. In 1958, when Hugh O'Brian was 33 years old and at the height of his fame playing Wyatt Earp on television, he received a message that would change the rest of his life. The call asked him to travel to Lambaréné, a remote village in Gabon, where Nobel Peace Prize winner Dr. Albert Schweitzer ran a small hospital. The journey was long and difficult, involving a commercial plane, a bush plane, and even a canoe across the Ogooué River. When he arrived, he stepped into a world very different from Hollywood. For 9 days, he watched Schweitzer and his team care for leprosy patients without electricity, without running water, and without complaint. The experience left him shaken and inspired. Just 2 weeks after returning to America, he founded the very first Hugh O'Brian Youth Leadership Seminar in Los Angeles, beginning a movement that would grow far beyond what he imagined. Before Hugh left Africa, Schweitzer took his hand and asked a question that would never leave him. He said, "What are you going to do with this?" He wasn't asking about fame in a lighthearted way. He was asking how Hugh would use his position, his influence, and his voice. The words cut deeply, and for weeks afterward, Hugh couldn't stop thinking about them. They forced him to question question the meaning of his life. He could have gone back to Hollywood and treated the experience as a passing memory, but he didn't. He decided that his celebrity meant nothing unless it was used to make a difference. That single question became the seed of everything he would do next. By the 1960s, Hugh was facing a personal battle that threatened to derail him. Years of filming gunfight scenes, sometimes firing more than 100 rounds in a single episode without ear protection, had left him with serious hearing loss. The damage was permanent, and it brought with it the kind of loneliness only those with hidden disabilities truly understand. The seminars he had created became his answer to that isolation. Hobie gave him not only the chance to help others, but also a way to feel connected again. Surrounded by ambitious young leaders every year, he found purpose and belonging in their energy. It wasn't just philanthropy, it was therapy. Instead of fading into silence, he chose to build a legacy that would outlive him. From that small start, Hobie grew into something extraordinary. More than 500,000 students from all 50 states and over 15 countries have taken part in its programs. Every year, more than 8,500 young people attend one of the 70 or more seminars held around the world. Since 1998, Hobie alumni have given more than 5 million hours of service to their communities. Hugh often said this was his proudest achievement. Out of all the roles he played and the fame he enjoyed, nothing compared to seeing young people discover that they could make a difference. He knew those numbers meant his work was reaching far beyond him, carrying forward the challenge Schweitzer had once given him. To expand the program, Hugh used every resource at his disposal. He called in favors from Hollywood friends, attracted media coverage, and spent much of his own money to make sure the seminars didn't just survive, but thrived. By the late 1970s, Hobie had spread to 19 countries. Its focus was always on critical thinking, civic responsibility, and empathy, the same values Hugh had seen in Africa. Privately, he admitted that the work also filled the emptiness he sometimes felt from his hearing struggles and the pain of failed relationships. Pouring himself into Hobie was his way of transforming personal loss into something greater. It was redemption, built not on regret but on action. At 81, Hugh surprised the world again when he married for the first time. On June 25, 2006, after 18 years together, he wed Virginia Barber at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale. Virginia was a teacher, nearly 30 years younger, and their long relationship had defied the usual Hollywood headlines. The wedding drew 300 guests and even featured a serenade by Debbie Reynolds, officiated by televangelist Rev. Robert Schuller. It was called A Wedding to Die For because it took place in the same cemetery where Hugh would one day be buried. The unusual venue fit his sense of humor and his refusal to follow the rules of Hollywood tradition. Instead of a glamorous resort honeymoon, the couple went to Oxford University to study philosophy. Hugh explained his choice by saying that an active mind was just as important as an active body. Friends who knew him well said the marriage was both a victory and a farewell. Hugh had avoided commitment for decades, yet finally, in his 80s, he gave in to love and companionship. At the same time, he was already facing more health challenges and growing dependence on Virginia's support. To his friends, it was bittersweet, but to Hugh, it was proof that it was never too late to embrace change. He lived for another decade after the wedding. On September 5, 2016, at 91 years old, Hugh O'Brian died peacefully at his Beverly Hills home with Virginia by his side. He had battled several age-related illnesses, but in the end, he left the world quietly, just as he wanted. After his death, a new chapter of his story began in the courts. In his 2011 trust, Hugh had written clearly, "I do not have any children, living or deceased." He even listed 7 individuals by name, including Hugh Donald Crampa, his own birth name, disinheriting them all. It was a move that shocked many and seemed designed to prevent any legal challenge. But almost immediately, 4 people came forward claiming to be his children. Among them was Kimberly Rallo, who said her mother had dated Hugh in the early 1960s and that Hugh had even paid the doctor who delivered her. Others included Adam Ross, Jim Venverlo, and Donald Etkes, each with their own story and each ready to submit DNA evidence. The legal battles dragged on for years. Virginia, who had just lost her husband, now found herself in court defending his estate. The fights consumed millions of dollars in legal fees, money that was supposed to go to the Hugh O'Brian Youth Leadership Foundation. Scholarships and youth programs were put on hold, while the courtroom struggles played out. It was a painful twist, turning a man who had given so much to young people into the center of a dispute that delayed his final gift to them.